Greetings, everyone. Well, today I thought we would dive back into the Italian horror collection because there's a couple of special limited editions I thought you might like a closer look at. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Well, I'm kind of sad to say that due to all the DVD selling and whatnot over the past few months, my Italian horror collection has definitely taken a big hit. There's really not much left. But I'm not too broken up about it because most, if not all, of the titles that I had in my Italian horror collection have since been re-released either in superior DVD editions, such as having anamorphic widescreen instead of the non-anamorphic widescreen I was talking about in the Phenomena review, or they've been put out on Blu-ray. So the way I look at it is they're not movies that I watch all the time, so having them temporarily absent from my collection isn't really too big a concern, because ideally I would have been planning to upgrade them to the superior editions anyway, so I just kind of got to jump on that by selling the old editions before I was actually ready to upgrade to the superior editions. Now that said, there are two particular editions of two particular Dario Argento movies that I really don't see myself parting with, simply because they were both limited, numbered editions and are kind of rare. Now, while both of these have been re-released in recent years, they have not been re-released with quite everything that was in these particular editions. So without any further ado, let's take a look at them, shall we? So first up we have Opera by Dario Argento, largely considered one of his all-time greats. In fact, most of his earlier stuff seems to be generally quite highly regarded by fans. So we'll give you a look at the cover here. Now, a couple of things that make this particular edition of Opera cool are the fact that it's a limited numbered edition. If we take a look at the back cover here, and I'll just doubly show you here, you can see this was actually a limited edition of 3,000 copies. This is probably one of my most limited release DVDs, like in my entire collection. So this particular one is number 1052 out of 3,000. That's pretty cool. The other thing that makes this edition cool is it's actually a 2-disc edition. As you can see, it's a thick case, which you really don't see very much these days. Nowadays they tend to cram as many as 6 or more discs in the space of a single keep case. They just basically re-engineered the trays inside so you can fit more in less space, which is actually pretty cool for those who have large collections, because it means you can get the slimmer edition of whatever it happens to be, usually season sets of shows and whatnot, and save a lot of shelf space, so that's pretty cool. But, you know, I kind of like these thick cases. I mean, they look impressive on the shelf. They stand out from all the keep cases. So the other thing that's cool about this, I'll just show you how it opens here. There you go. So you have one side, the other side, and then a tray in the middle. So what you got inside, let's close this side first. So what you got inside is the disc and the insert. And I'll give you a more detailed look at the insert here as well, just before we get onto the second disc, because this is going to cover most of the screen. So I'll just sit in the middle and let it cover my face. So yeah, so you have basically just a reproduction of the cover and the chapter listing, and then on the inside you have this. Can you see? Which is a nice little essay about the making of the movie, and some nice little personal anecdotes and memories about the movie from the guy who wrote the essay, Michael Felsher. So, pretty cool stuff. Now as for the second disc, and one of the reasons I like to keep this edition, is you actually have the soundtrack. Yes, and the soundtrack on this is by none other than Claudio Simonetti, longtime collaborator with Dario Argento and one of the primary members of Goblin, who of course we all know from films like Dawn of the Dead and Suspiria. So that's pretty cool stuff. Now as for the movie itself, essentially what you're looking at is a fairly straightforward giallo, as they call it. Giallo being Italian for yellow, And the reason that they call these types of films yellow is because they're very much in the same vein of sort of pulp murder mysteries that used to be published in Italy back in the day. And they tended to have yellow covers to distinguish them as, pulp murder mysteries. Now, the basic format for giallo films is pretty straightforward. Essentially, they're murder mysteries where the murder scenes are extraordinarily graphically depicted, which is why they tend to be lumped into the horror category, though technically they're not horror films, they're actually murder mysteries. And then every giallo story always has a twist ending that you just don't see coming. Sometimes they have a couple of twists along the way. So personally, I really enjoyed them. I think they're a lot of fun. And opera is certainly no exception to this. They have the obligatory twist ending, some extremely graphic death scenes, and very creative, might I add. Now, I had actually seen a clip from this many, many moons ago on some documentary about horror films. I think it was about notable scenes or memorable scenes in horror films. All I will say is it involves a peephole, like a peephole in a door where you see who's standing on the other side of the door. Yeah, it's a scene involving a peephole. And this peephole scene just stuck in my head like for my entire life, but I could not for the life of me remember what the movie was called. So when I started collecting the Dario Argento movies, I was overjoyed when I read the liner notes. Because what's the first thing I see? The title of the essay, An Aria of Terror, or How a Bullet and a Peephole Made My Day. As soon as I read that, the memory came flooding back. I was like, oh my god, this is the movie with that peephole scene. I've been looking for this forever. And then I look again on the chapter list. Chapter 17, Peephole. I was like, oh my god, this is so the movie. So I was overjoyed. I was finally able to see the rest of the movie instead of just that one memorable clip. And that one memorable clip is indeed very memorable, and it's wonderful. Now, Dario Argento also made an adaptation of Phantom of the Opera, which a lot of people really did not like, because it was sort of a more psychological horror rather than a typical adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera story. A lot of people say that this is more what they would expect from a Dario Argento Phantom of the Opera adaptation. Yeah, you can definitely see a lot of similarities and a lot of inspiration there. So as for special features, in typical Anchor Bay Deluxe Edition fashion, this is pretty loaded. You've got a widescreen presentation in the correct 2.35 to 1 CinemaScope aspect ratio, enhanced for 16:9 TVs, which means, yes, kiddies, it's anamorphic, so it will look beautiful on your 16:9 screen. Conducting Dario Argento's Opera, an all-new 36-minute documentary featuring interviews with co-writer-director Dario Argento, cinematographer Ronnie Taylor, animatronics artist Sergio Stivoletti, music composer Claudio Simonetti, and stars Daria Nicolodi and Urbano Barberini. So that's pretty cool. Then you got theatrical trailers, a Demonia music video. Demonia is Claudio Simonetti's more recent band. It's basically the same kind of deal as Goblin, I think just different band members, but very much the same kind of thing. And you do see him do covers of old Goblin tracks under the Demonia name from time to time, so that's pretty cool. And you get a Dario Argento bio, and of course disc 2, as I already mentioned, is the original Claudio Simonetti soundtrack CD. Now, one thing I noticed is this says it's version 2.0, so I don't know what that means, if there was maybe a non-anamorphic version of this released beforehand. I find it very hard to believe that this would be limited to 3,000 copies, given how popular the movie is and how widespread I see this edition. So I'm thinking that version 1 was probably also a limited edition, but a higher print run. But that's just a theory. I haven't actually really looked into that at all. And whatever the problems were with version 1, the fact that this is version 2 basically means, whatever those problems were, I don't have on mine. So that's all good in my books. So I'm quite happy to have the far more limited version 2. Alrighty, so next time we're going to talk about probably my all-time favorite Argento movie ever, in what is still to date the best edition to get. Suspiria. That'll be next time on the Multimedia Chronicles. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.